Good morning. Here is your objective for the day. I will be able to solve equations involving the distributive property by using rules of equality. And rules of equality are whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Exactly the same. If you add 2 to one side, you have to add 2 to the other side so that the equation stays equal. So we have one word problem here and then 3 two-step equations to do. So Yoshiro has a new puppy. She decides to create an enclosure for her puppy in her backyard. The enclosure is in the shape of a hexagon with one pair of opposite sides, right here, running the same distance along the edge of 2 parallel flower beds. So these are the flower beds right here. If the perimeter of the enclosure is 137 feet, what is the length of each side that runs along the flower bed? Write an equation to represent the situation. So we know these lengths. We know 10, 12, 15, 20, and we know that these two are the same. They are labeled as n. And we know that the total is 137 feet. So what you could do here is you could work your way through. You could subtract these values, see what's left, and divide that by 2. And we're going to see that we actually are going to do that same exact thing, but through an equation. So I'm going to write down all my numbers here that add to be 137. So I have 20 plus 15 plus 12 plus 10 plus n plus n, and all of that equals 137. All of this added up equals 57. And I have 2 n's here, so I can write 2n equals 137. So this is our equation that represents our situation. This is also an equation, but this is a more simplified one. Now you're going to see that the same way that you would logic your way through by subtracting these from the total and then seeing what you get and dividing by 2, we're going to do that with this equation. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get n by itself. So that means we need to subtract 57 and then divide by 2 so that n is all by itself over here. So we're going to subtract 57. We're left with just 2n over here. And so these 2 n's, they're going to add together to be 80. So I took away all of these values from my total, and I saw that there was 80 feet left between those 2 flower beds. So we divide that by 2, which is what we're doing here. We get a giant 1, and we get that each flower bed is 40 feet long. Now we could go back and check that, and we could say, okay, 20 plus 15 plus 12 plus 10 plus 40 plus 40 does equal 137. So remember that our goal is to get the variable by itself. So we're doing the opposite. So subtraction is the opposite of addition. And the division is the opposite of multiplication. So we see multiplication here, so we do the opposite to get rid of it. We see addition here, so we do the opposite to get rid of it. This is what we're going to do for the next 3 as well. So for this one, we see that there's some distribution that we can do first. Now, there's 2 ways to do this. We could either divide both sides by 12 to get rid of the 12, or we can distribute the 12. And since we've been practicing distribution, we're just going to distribute the 12. So we get 12x minus 24, because 12 times x and 12 times 2. So I need to get x by itself, x alone. So I'm going to get rid of the 24. The 24 is subtracting, so I'm going to add 24. And then I need to get rid of the 12. The 12 is multiplying, so I'm going to divide by 12. So add 24 to both sides. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the exact same thing to the other. I'm left with 12x equals 96. And then I have to divide by 12 to get rid of the 12. This gets me 8. And 12 over 12 is a giant 1, which is exactly what I wanted. I want 1x equals 8. And we can check our work by plugging this 8 back into our equation. So 12, and then instead of x, we're going to substitute an 8 minus 2 equals 72. 12 times 6, does that equal 72? Yes, it does. Okay, now this next one has a fraction here, so that's one little extra step to think about. So we want to get x by itself. We want x alone. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to subtract 4 to get rid of that addition 4. And then we need to divide by negative 1/3. So the thing about fractions is that when we divide by negative 1/3, we know that this is the same as multiplying by their reciprocal. So when we're dividing fractions, for example, 1/2 divided by 3/4, we keep, change, flip. So dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. We can also see that when we have 1/3, that 3 is kind of like, it's also a denominator of this term. So it's dividing. So if we wanted to get rid of it, we are going to multiply by negative 3. So whichever way you want to think about it, whether you want to think about it as change and flip, or if you want to think about it as that a denominator is dividing, so we want to do the opposite, which is multiplying. Either way, we're going to multiply by negative 3. So first, subtract 4. This makes a 0. I'm left with negative 1/3 x equals negative 2 minus 4. That's going to be negative 6. I start at negative 2. I go backward 4. And then I'm going to multiply by negative 3. Let's see why that works. So we have negative 3 over 1 times negative 1/3. Well, this is just going to make positive 3/3, which is equal to 1, which is exactly what we want. We just want 1x equals positive 18. We can check our work by putting the 18 here, and I'll put this in a different color. So we have negative 1/3 times 18 plus 4 equals negative 2. Well, 1/3 times 18 is 18 divided by 3, so that's negative 6 plus 4 equals negative 2, which is true. And here's our last one with decimals. So we're going to do the same exact thing, but we just have decimal to work with. So first, we want p alone. So we want to subtract 5.6, and then we want to divide by negative 2. And we see that the 5 here is positive, so we want to subtract it to get 0. But the 2 is negative, but it's multiplying. That's why we're dividing by a negative. So I'm going to subtract 5.6. 13 minus 5 wholes is 8, and then minus 6 more tenths is 7.4. I get negative 2p equals 7.4. I'm going to divide by negative 2. This makes a giant 1, and I'm left with p equals negative 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, and 4 divided by 2 is 0.2, so that's 3.7. You could have also done that in the house as well. Okay. Have fun. Oh, wait, we have to check our work, sorry. So we have negative 3.7, so 5.6 minus 2 times 3, negative 3.7 equals 13. Well, we know from, this is positive because there are two negatives. We just divided this and got, so this is 7.4. Sorry, equals 13, and this indeed does equal 13.